Hello, everyone. Welcome to JMac Investing. My name is Jason. Have a very special guest. Have Thomas Healy, the CEO of Hyliion, back on the show once again. It's always nice to have him on the show. Seems to be a fan favorite of you all, and of course, you all know that I'm uh, very much a fan of Hyliion and their initiative and what they're doing in the trucking industry. So, no further ado, I'm gonna bring Thomas on. How you doing, sir?
Hey JMac, how are you? I'm doing great here, and thanks for having us back on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, and always good to have you on and talk about some of the new things going on over at Hyliion.
Yeah, no doubt it's been exciting to say the least. I think it was probably what, like 6 months ago or so that we last chatted, kind of when Hyllion was going through the de-SPAC process, and it's been a hell of a journey since then. We've been having a bunch of fun, making a ton of progress, and really pushing the initiative forward here. So excited to get to share a little bit more with you here, and give a little bit more insight of what we're doing. I feel like you've got a great understanding of what we're up to. So hopefully we can dive into some of the details here.
For sure, absolutely. So we finally have some long awaited news on the HyperTruck ERX, which is something I've been really anticipating and looking forward to. And so now you have this newly formed HyperTruck Innovation Council. Give us some insights on what this council is all about. I know I actually went on your website yesterday and I saw that it's like front and center, and I went through and you've got like a little quote from each of the members of the council on the website. So anyone who hasn't done that, go to Hyliion.com and go check that out, and you can check that out. But yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, so ever since we announced the Hypertruck, we've been getting a ton of fleet interest, ton of fleet excitement in it, and fleets wanting to be early adopters of this solution. And so what we did is we said, all right, well, we can't boil the ocean here. We can't in the beginning work with everyone, unfortunately, right? That's just kind of the nature of rolling out a new product. And so what we did is we looked at kind of that interest we were getting, and we put together this kind of, I think there's about 10 fleets in this, in the initial batch of this fleet council here, who are going to be kind of the partners in doing the early rollout and early adoption into the industry. And as you look at these fleets, I mean, it's some of the top names, top brands, largest fleets in the trucking industry. We have fleets like Penske and Ryder and Anheuser-Busch and Schneider and Werner. I mean, some NFI, some of the largest fleets that you have across the U.S. here. And so we not only have them here to be the early adopters of the initial demo vehicles that we're going to be bringing out, but we actually asked them to get a little bit more involved in that. We asked them to actually be part of the development cycle with us here, so that as we're going through putting the product together, rolling out tests and validation of it, we actually can get their feedback early on in the process here. So we know that when we bring this product to market, it's going to be a winner with these fleets, right? The last thing we want to do is bring something out to a fleet and the fleet says, well, you didn't design this with this in mind or that in mind, and that won't make it a successful product. So we're really fortunate to have these guys being a part of the process early on here, giving us really strong and direct feedback, and also showing us strong excitement and interest in the solution we're bringing to market, and being there to be the first ones to actually run it in their fleets.
That's great. I was going to ask who. I know that probably took a lot of work to organize all of those companies. Like, so whose idea was it to kick off a council like that? Was it yours, or was it? It seemed like to me, I was taking a guess that it may be Andrew Card. It seemed like something that he might push for, but yeah.
It was a team effort, no doubt. I mean, everything from the board of directors was involved in it, to our sales team as well. And what we're sitting in this really interesting position where every day we were getting outreach from fleets expressing they wanted to figure out how they could try or adopt the HyperTruck solution, and that interest is fantastic, right? But at the same point, in order to be successful, we had to kind of narrow in this focus, and so. That's where these will be the initial ones rolling it out. And I think for us, what we did is we went through kind of a process with many of these fleets where we had long calls with their management teams, with their trucking teams, and we discussed actually kind of how this product is going to work for them. So it wasn't just like kind of, hey, do you want to do this? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, let's, this sounds good. This was actually like a long thought through process of discussing what are the paybacks going to be, what is the ROI going to be, how's this going to work in their actual operations, right? If you talk to a fleet owner or an operator, they are extremely practical about how they want to roll their fleet out, and for them, these solutions that they're going to adopt have to work in their operations, right? And so we got into discussions of where are they going to fuel these trucks, and what's the fueling cost going to be in those areas, and actually kind of derive a payback model based on what comparing it to a diesel truck. And I think that's where the technology really shines and really makes sense for these fleets.
Right. So was part of them agreeing to join the council, them also, is every one of the members going to take on one or more of your HyperTruck ERX early models to test and get it in their hands? So every one of those that have joined, is that part of the agreement?
That's correct. Yeah. So all of them will be part of that initial demo rollout, which is going to start at the end of this year and it's going to go into next year as well. And so all the fleets that we've announced will be a part of that, and we'll be taking those initial demo deliveries. And I think for us, it's a way where the onus is now kind of in our hands to go prove out the technology to these fleets, right? Anytime you bring a new technology to a fleet operator, they show excitement and interest and want to kind of dive into the details on it. But then once they think that this is something that can work for them, the discussion shifts to, let me actually run this in my fleet, try it for myself, and go see if the product works as you say it's going to. And so that's what we've been able to line up with these guys is they're excited about actually getting to try it in their own operations. And then, as I was saying before, the onus is on us to prove out the value proposition and go drive towards, making this our goal is make it the powertrain of choice for these fleets for the future of, what they're going to be adopting into their operations. And, these fleets are running, I think it's over 100,000 vehicles, when you add it all up amongst these 10 fleets. So, there's no shortage of opportunity for us.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic way to get feedback from fleets that have tons of vehicles on the road. So like you said, how many HyperTruck ERXs do you plan on allocating to each company?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a mix between the different ones. It varies, and we're kind of still working through some of that process right now. And we've got a stage gate here where at the end of this year we're going to be putting the initial demos out. I'm sure you saw that we announced that the initial vehicles are going to be on a Peterbilt chassis, which we're thrilled about as well. Keeping the Texas pride going on here. The Peterbilt trucks are made up in Denton, Texas. So we're excited to be working with them on this as well. And initial vehicles will be on that Peterbilt. We'll start getting those out later this year, and then going into next year, we'll start increasing it. And in the beginning, what we're going to be doing is taking these chassis, moving them from one fleet to the next, getting various inputs, and then we'll be coming back and actually delivering them, handing over the keys, saying, hey, this is your truck to run. And then from there, we're going to look to scale up volume. So with each fleet, it might be a little bit different, but overall, the goal is get those initial trucks out later this year, and then start scaling up some volume next year.
So I guess the hope and expectation from this would be that some of these guys would also follow up with orders after testing, right?
Yeah. So no doubt that's the goal, right? That's kind of the carrot that's out there for us of, we've been given this opportunity to prove out the product in these fleets operations. And, I think when you look at this and you think about all these fleets that we mentioned and many of the other fleets out there, they want to move to electric, right? But what they're faced against right now is trying to figure out what electric solution makes sense for them. And when you start diving into those kind of granular discussions, it becomes, a lot of like the practicality questions start coming out. Like we had a fleet mention to us, they wanted to move to fully electric, and they were one of their terminals, and they were looking at how much was it going to cost to move that terminal over to having rechargers for all their trucks. It was about maybe 150 trucks, I think, out of that location. the quote that came back from their utility provider was about $30 million. And so right there, it's like that kind of breaks down the practicality of a solution, right? I mean, if in many instances, the fleet's not going to be able or not going to want to spend $30 million on it on infrastructure costs. Similar thing with, as you look at that kind of the hydrogen future. And, I think we've been, since the last time we spoke, we've been a little bit more bullish on our hydrogen roadmap and, where we think things are heading. But today, hydrogen costs are up at, I think it's like $16 per kilogram. So, you're looking at, much more expensive than diesel fuel versus, for the renewable natural gas that we're able to use to charge our batteries, we're at like a third to half the cost of diesel today. So at that point, it makes a lot of sense for a fleet, and it's something that they can see a path to having this work in their fleets in the near future, as opposed to being something that's a long ways away.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a tweet from Clean Energy yesterday that RNG growth it has increased 267% over the last 5 years, and so RNG adoption is definitely taking place. It's kind of going under the radar though, with all of the the buzz about all of the different potential solid state batteries, this, that, the third. But I believe that you guys have one of the really only solution for long haul trucking that's out there, which is one of the reasons I've been a fan and a cheerleader on the sideline for Hyliion, because I don't see could you imagine the weight of a over the road truck filled with batteries? Or maybe the whole trailer part of it would have to be halfway filled with batteries to get it 1,000 or 1,200 miles, what you guys can do.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And one fleet this quote has stuck with me since they said it. They're like, look, we're in the business of shipping goods around and making money off of what we move around, not in just moving batteries so that we can drive the truck, right? So no, it's weight of batteries is a big issue today. And so then, what I've seen though is like there's so much development going on in the battery space. No doubts we're going to see breakthroughs. We're going to see weight reductions, energy density increase in these batteries. The practicality of having a BEV long haul truck, I don't see that as not happening, right? It will happen. The problem I foresee though is that the infrastructure needed to actually charge these things is where the problem's going to lie. And I actually think the infrastructure is going to be a much longer term issue than necessarily the technology of the truck. I think the same exact thing is going to happen with hydrogen fuel cell, where we're going to have the technology to roll out fuel cell trucks. We're not going to have the hydrogen infrastructure needed to actually do it. On the BEV side, one anecdote that, when you start thinking about it, it's kind of like, well, how's this going to work? Is 2 Tesla megacharger truck charging stations will consume more electricity than an entire truck manufacturing plant. So think about that. 2 rechargers is going to be more than an entire manufacturing, large manufacturing plant. So as you think about the impact that this is going to have on the grid, it starts, kind of the value proposition starts falling apart, right? I mean, I forget who did the study, but they were saying that, if we actually moved like a bunch of the trucking industry over to being plug-in BEV, we're going to need to start turning on all of the coal-fired power plants that, are sitting there dormant for just when peak loads come in. So then you're going to have like the pollution from these coal-fired power plants is going to be way worse than just running a diesel truck, right? So that infrastructure question is, I think, the area where we really need to have solutions brought forward before fuel cell or BEV long haul are going to be really practical solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just thinking about the logistics of trying to, people just think, well, there's charges out there. Yeah, can you think about an 18-wheeler? That's how long are 18-wheelers with the tractor included? Like 60 plus feet?
Yeah, trailers like 53 feet, and then cabs maybe 15, 20. So somewhere in that ballpark.
So you can't just pull a tractor trailer up to the small little charging stations. They would block every single charger that was there if it were like a Tesla, for the vehicles. So like you said, so it's just not practical. So I wanted to transition a little bit, and it looks like you guys have been building out a team of developers, engineers, and PR and media and communications. I actually was on your because I had reached out through your investor relations at one point. So I was on, I guess, on a contact list. So once you had a new investor relations person added to the team, they just reached out with a short email that just said, just want to let you know we're here if you have any questions or et cetera. That was just being on a list. And that was nice getting that follow up.
You
and
heard
then
from
also,
Lewis? That's who it was? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's
So
great.
he's doing his job well. And so, but it's just one of those things where because I have always been a proponent of you guys and sort of associated. I always get it on my in YouTube comments and on Twitter. Their PR is not great, blah 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 blah. But I could say that you guys have made great strides, and you are adding on the personnel. I mean, what more can you talk about at the moment?
Yeah, so bringing in really talented people has been a huge focus since we announced the SPAC transaction and went through the DSPAC process. I mean, everything from bringing in-house general counsel, new CFO, new sales lead, new marketing lead, build out of a marketing team. I'm sitting here, across from Valentino, who recently just joined us, set up a new studio here at Hyliion. I mean, the amount of people that we've been bringing in, on that end of the business has been fantastic. But, one area that maybe doesn't get discussed about as much, but where, the most growth has actually happened in the engineering side of things. We've been bringing in people who have trucking experience in their background, have electric vehicle experience, really, really brilliant software engineers to drive the technology forward. I mean, that's been a huge part of the focus for us. And it's been exciting to see, the growth here. I mean, we had one of our board members come into the office who hadn't been here for a little while due to COVID, and came in and he was like, "Wow, there's like desks everywhere in this place. Like this is, place looks totally different than the last time I saw it, right?" It's growing at a nonstop pace right now, which is exciting to see.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's great. That's great. It's good to see the team coming together like that. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, and then you also touched on it in your earnings call. The discussion about your platform being fuel agnostic, and then you released a presentation attached to that, and it looks like you guys are going to iteratively move towards hydrogen, and like you said, once it gets built out. But have you guys started actually trying to engineer and move into that, or is that something that's just going to be worked on in the future?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll start with kind of giving an overview on that roadmap, because I want your viewers to kind of understand that, and then I'll dive into kind of where we're at in the process.
Sounds
So,
good.
so as you look at the roadmap, we're starting with a renewable natural gas powered vehicle that charges the batteries, right? So when you think about a natural gas versus a hydrogen fuel cell truck, the powertrain is actually the same. The battery packs, the axles that drive the vehicle, the electric motor, that all stays the same. The only thing that changes is the actual generator under the hood, and then obviously the fuel that you're putting in the vehicle. And so, as we are developing this HyperTruck platform, this technology, we're keeping hydrogen in mind. And in our last earnings call, we rolled out a 3-step process to get to hydrogen. So the first is the vehicle we're developing today. Renewable natural gas gets, converted into electricity on the truck, and that's what charges the batteries. Phase 2 is actually moving to a generator solution that's fuel agnostic. So the generator could run on either natural gas or it could run on hydrogen. So now you're giving a solution to fleets that they actually get to choose what fuel is most economical, hits their emissions targets the best. The onus or the opportunity is really in their hands to use what they think works the best. And then the third step is moving to a purely hydrogen fuel cell based vehicle. So that middle step there is, I think, one of the big differentiators for Hyliion, because, as you think about this eventual shift towards hydrogen, stations aren't going to show up overnight, right? I mean, that you're not going to have, like with natural gas, you have 700 stations across the US. You're not going to have 700 hydrogen stations built out overnight. So as we think about this shift, if we can provide a fleet of vehicle that could run on either hydrogen or natural gas, and they really get to choose what makes the most sense, that really helps with this evolution taking place. And for Hyliion, having this roadmap to hydrogen, I think it positions us uniquely where we're not sitting here saying once infrastructure is built or once hydrogen costs come down or once green hydrogen, most hydrogen is very pollutive right now. Once green hydrogen's made, then we're going to have a solution. No, Hyliion's in here today saying we can use what's already there with natural gas to then get this shift starting to take place, and we have the plan to play in hydrogen in the future as well.
Right. Yeah, that was actually something I was going to ask about, was the different phases, the iterations of it, and so if it is going to be a hybrid version of that, so I guess you would have to, at that point, that's when you're looking at it when the hydrogen fuel cell network is, fueling stations are beginning to get built out. But so does that mean you'll have to have 2 tanks, I guess, in that hybrid version, or would you select it?
Yeah, so some of those details are still being worked through. I mean, when you think about the hydrogen network, there's still debates going on of like which fueling nozzles are going to be used for hydrogen vehicles, right? I mean, like for class A trucks, right? Because you need to pump a lot of fuel into a vehicle very quickly, and so a lot of this stuff hasn't been figured out yet. I mean, the Euphoria solution is you actually have one tank that you can mix the gases in, and we're seeing a lot of discussion happening about that right now, where there's discussions of putting hydrogen actually in the natural gas pipelines. There's some issues there with corrosion and leakage and stuff. So, but I think the Euphoria solution is actually having one tank that can be fueled on either. And then where we're spending more of our time and effort is actually on the generator that produces the electricity. And that generator path that we're heading down is where we know that can run on either fuel source. So, going back to your earlier question of where are we really at in this process, the focus is let's develop the technology on the generator side, and we're doing that through partners. So we're not doing that all on our own, but develop that technology first. And then as we develop and roll out the HyperTruck ERX on natural gas, then once we have that vehicle kind of fully baked, if you want to call it, we can take that chassis, pull it over to the fuel agnostic or the fuel cell solution, and just swap out the generator.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Because like you said, if the standards aren't even in place yet for it, how would you develop the whole system as it stands? So yeah, it makes total sense. So how has interest been on your hybrid? It looks like you got NGV Global Group that recently, I guess took on a few of your hybrid solutions. How's that going?
Yeah, so interest has been strong and continuing to roll out more and more units into fleet's hands. One of the other things we've put out there is later this year, we're going to be rolling out a updated version, a next gen version of the hybrid. And then it's going to be that solution that we start trying to scale up and get more volume out in the industry. And so right now it's still low volume rollouts, really getting, feedback from fleets, making continued, iterations to the products, improvements. And ultimately, as I was kind of saying before with the HyperTruck, we need to make sure the thing is, meeting the needs of that fleet. And so we're in that kind of early rollout phase right now. And then as we release the next gen later this year, then we can go and start scaling up volume. You mentioned NGV. It's they also go under, their fleet actually goes under the name Green Path Logistics. So you may have seen them in the HyperTruck ERX Council as well. They're a part of that. Oh. And really fascinating business model where they are a fleet dedicated to only running on alternative fuel solutions. So they don't operate any pure diesel, only diesel trucks in their fleet. They're only doing alternative fuels, and they found for them it's a fantastic business model because there's a lot of companies out there who want to ship with partners who have this green focus, and we're excited to be able to help them with that initiative and play in that. Oh
wow, yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that they were part of the council, so that's cool.
So I'm curious, JMac, what's your kind of thoughts on kind of all that's happening in the hydrogen EV, buzz space going on in this market right now? Where do you think it all plays out?
Well, it's interesting because I have a Patreon and private Discord, and so we always have interesting discussions. And right now, a lot of pressure has been put on at least the share price of a lot of these companies, and some are not, some haven't delivered, some have. And so it's very interesting to see. To me, I believe it's a lot like the as the internet was being rolled out, where there were obviously really good players. I mean, your Microsofts, your Apples, your Amazons all came from that era. But so I think right now, actually, as some of that share price has come down, whereas a lot of people have been shifting away from it. To me, this is the time to sift through and find the really good ones, and and really go all in, because this is not like something that is just a fad or a trend. This is a transition globally that's occurring, and this is going to continue to shift, and we're going to move towards this, whether we like it or not. Most people do like it because it's good for the environment. It's good, it's just good all the way across the board. It's just so I think there's some confusion about the space right now, and there's some fear about the space. But to me, that breeds an opportunity. So I'm doubling down during this time right here. So yeah, so that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think my 2 cents on it, what I've been hearing from others as well, is like, there's a lot of EV companies coming to market. We now have, the capital behind these solutions to make them happen. So electrification is going to happen. I think all of us are pretty confident in that. Now it's really about choosing whose business model, whose path, whose trajectory do you think makes the most sense, and and really focusing on those organizations, right? I mean, I think our goal is like, look, all these companies, if there's plenty of space in the market for all of us to be successful in it. I think we're taking a very logical, practical, low capital intensive, when you compare us to some of the others in the space, way of getting this to market, and a much less risky. By only doing the powertrain, you still have great opportunities to drive significant revenue, but you're de-risking a lot of it, and you're using trucks that the fleets that we're working with already know and love, right? You're not trying to get them to change everything in their operations. So I guess look in detail at the business models and see which ones you think makes the most sense.
Right. Yeah. You're to that point. People don't understand. I don't think in some cases is that, like, you're doing the powertrain, not the whole truck. I think somehow some people are attached to Chevy or Ford, and they won't buy anything else other than that because their family has been buying it for generations. I think it's even much more in the trucking industry. So people that think these companies, or even like you, I've heard it in your early stages of when you were a SPAC. A lot of people thought you were building a truck as well, but
Yeah.
but as I think what we've learned is that I think truckers are more, like, comparison I'm making to people with their personal vehicles. Truckers are even more. They don't want to, if they're a Peterbilt guy, they're not going to change to a Tesla just because the Tesla's coming. They still want a Peterbilt. There's one other YouTuber. He's an 18-wheel investing, I think, is the channel name, and he covers your company as well. So I get some insights from him about the industry, and that's he's like, people are very attached to their trucks.
They are. And I mean, you think about it, the truck is a trucker's home, right? I mean, it's not just a vehicle to them. It's where they live. I mean, they spend weeks in these vehicles. And so you talk about, having a preference. Go ask any trucker what truck, is their favorite. All of them have a very strong opinion about it. And they want to stay with that chassis. They're willing to, switch out the generator, the powertrain. And frankly, if you go talk to a driver and you tell them you're going to give them more horsepower, more torque, quieter, better driving vehicle, they're sold, right? And it was like, I'll give you a quick story. We have one guy who's in the industry for his whole career in trucking, right? He came and actually drove in the HyperTruck system, and he got out of it, and he swung by my desk. It was like totally unsolicited feedback. He swung by my desk, and he was like, "That is going to change the industry. The way that vehicle drives, the way electric works, that is going to change things. It's going to change the way we think about trucking." So when you get that sort of feedback, it's no doubt it's motivating, right? We just got to keep moving forward, getting this thing out there.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. All right, Thomas, my final question:
Yeah.
when when will we see a Hypertruck ERX, whether it be demoed by one of these fleets, or you guys, testing your different new iterative prototypes on the
Yeah.
road?
So you're going to see us, well, I'll get to the answer first. Later this year, that's when these things are going to be out on the road, and you're going to see them. You're going to see, though, our marketing team is going to be, kind of bringing people through the process of getting them out there later this year. So you're going to be seeing updates on it. You're going to be seeing us actually going through the development, testing, validation process. But you'll actually see them out on the roads later this year. So we're extremely excited about it, and can't wait to get to show it a little bit more with the world here.
Very good, very good. All right, well, we're at 30 minutes here. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. As always, it's been a pleasure, and looking forward to continuing the discussion somewhere down the road.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you having us on.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.